hands, and then he passes out from the sight of Beatrice's beauty. We're going to see this more and more from about this point on through the rest of the Divine Comedy, that Dante the poet is trying to describe things that we have called in 303 translinguistic, beyond language. And because they're translinguistic, all he can do is say, I was overwhelmed and sometimes I just kind of passed out or whatever, right? Matilda then will immerse the unconscious Dante in the waters of Lethe. He wakes up. Now he will have forgotten the bad things that have happened. The procession proceeds to the Tree of Knowledge, where again Dante will sleep. And when he wakes, Beatrice is going to give him a mission. So she's going to say to him, your job is to look, watch, observe, and write, record everything you see. And then we got this very interesting series of bizarre kinds of visions. For those of you that know the Old Testament of the Bible, it's like the book of Ezekiel. For those of you who know the New Testament of the Bible, it's like some of the visions of John in the Revelation at the very end of the Bible. And in fact, we will have all of the major moments of church history somehow subsumed in these few lines. It's quite a remarkable thing. You're going to have this chariot, which will represent the church, being attacked by eagles, sometimes understood to be wrong, by foxes. Again, the eagle and golden wings and all of that, for the way the church, for Dante, in his criticism of the church, had relied too heavily on money. We remember Francis of Assisi making very similar kinds of accusations against the church. Finally, a dragon is there. Then we got the chariot turning into the translation is a whore, that is to say a woman who sleeps with men for money, and then a giant, and the giant is going to take the girl away. And so all of this obviously has any number of kinds of interpretations. And then Beatrice will prophesy God's vengeance on the dragon, the whore, the giant. In other words, God is going to recalibrate or balance the world. And we're now at the closing of Purgatory. Matilda will lead Dante to the river, and is the river for only remembering the good memories of one's life. And here immerses him in the water, a form of a kind of a baptism. And Dante is now ready to ascend to heaven with Statius and Beatrice as his guides. So there you go, a brief introduction. Now let's turn to the actual poem itself, okay? And we'll open with just a few lines to get a sense of the language. I'm working here with the Henry F. Carey translation from the Harvard Classics. There are lots and lots of good translations that we can suggest that you work with. Opening lines. Or better waves to speed her rapid course. The light bark of my genius lifts the sail, well pleased to leave so cruel sea behind, Inferno. And of that second region will I sing, in which the human spirit from sinful blot is purged, i.e. purgatory, and for ascent to heaven prepares. There are some who argue that if you grew up Catholic, going to Catholic school, and you learned about purgatory, you learned about it really through Dante. And if you read Purgatory as you've grown up in this world, you go, this is where so many of the sisters gave us all this information from. The word pictures are, of course, truly compelling. Now again, as we said, right away we're in anti-purgatory in Canto 1. They meet Cato, which is really an amazing choice. He's a pagan, he committed suicide. That is to say, think about this. Why would this cat be the guide or the gatekeeper for purgatory? Why wouldn't he be down in Inferno, at least in limbo? There a lot of scholars have made a lot of spelt a lot of ink on this. I think in the end, the argument that they always come to is Dante wants to remind us you can't know everything. Remember Ulysses in Inferno said he wanted to know everything. I think the point here is for Dante, you can't know everything. There are some things that this poem is going to remain an enigma throughout the poem. Here, a classic example. And Cato will say, I'm sent from the Virgin Mary, and it's time to clean up, and it's time to travel. In other words, before you can be purged, you have to purge the dirt, if you get me. Canto 2, Dante and Virgil will see an angel. Got a boat, you got a bunch of people singing songs, this time from Psalm 114. Let's point this out. Lots of singing in Purgatory, no singing in Inferno. Lots of hugging in Purgatory, no hugging in Inferno, right? We can begin to see the difference between the two places. The souls are penitents, sent to Purgatory, obviously, to cleanse themselves. Dante is hugged by Caecilia, right? And all the souls will gather together, we're told, at Ostia, which is the port outside Rome on the Tiber. And then they caught the boat, and here they are. They share a song. And we got two different times already in the canticle, in Canto 1 or 2, where we've got singing going on. They share a song. Cato tells everyone to get climbing, and I'll just read a couple of lines from this one as well, which is kind of fun. Fast fixed in mute attention to his notes, we stood with, lo, that old man venerable exclaiming, Cato, how is this, ye tardy spirits? What negligence detains you loitering here? Run to the mountain to cast off those scales that from your eyes the sight of God conceal. Up on your feet, this is no time to tire, you'll remember from Inferno. The lines we memorized, right? Canto number 3. Now here we have the late repentance. This is at the base of the mountain, the excommunicants, as they're sometimes called. Dante has a shadow, and therefore proving he's still alive. Virgil points out that humans will never fully understand God's ways. That is to say, the humility. We think about T.S. Eliot's 4 quartets, East Coker, and that second part. The only wisdom we can hope to acquire is the wisdom of humility. Humility is endless, T.S. Eliot says. The great lover of the Divine Comedy, and especially these lines, right, from Canto 3. They're at the foot of the mountain. They meet Manfred, the king of Naples. He tells his story. He explains why he has to wait to climb the mountain. You got to wait 30 times the length of your sin, so there's some mathematics as to how it is that you can get up. But this is key, and we hear it over and over again in Purgatory. You can get up the mountain faster if people back home on earth will pray for your soul. In other words, if they're praying for your soul, they theoretically would also be thinking about their own spiritual well-being, and therefore you can understand why, again, Purgatory is this incredibly hope-filled place, not only for those there, but for those who are back home. Manfred will in fact say, tell my daughter Constance to pray for me, this is the Queen of Aragon. So in other words, if she's remembering her father, she will maybe remember her own soul. Or in Canto 4, still anti-Purgatory, the indolent souls of the first spurs, it's sometimes referred to. They find the steep path up the mountain. Dante tries to go, but he gets tired and he has to rest. And here I'll just read a couple of lines from Canto 4 for you as well, just because I love this language. He said to me, such is this steep ascent, that it is ever difficult at first, but more a man proceeds, less evil grows. When pleasant, it shall seem to thee so much that upward going shall be easy to thee, and as in a vessel to go down the tide, then of this path thou wilt have reached the end. There hope to rest thee from thy toil. No more I answer, and thus far from certain, no. In other words, you got to go through some really tough struggles, but finally it will be worth it. They meet Balisua, who has to wait in anti-Purgatory, and then we move on to Canto 5. The anti-Purgatory, the second spear, those who died by violence without last rites. They approach a group of singing people. Again, we have singing people. They meet 2 messengers. All these people, again, died by violence, but repented right before they died. Dante will hear Jacopo della Grosso. He died in a marsh, and he will tell his story. Buonconti tells his story, wounded in the throat in battle. And then finally a woman, Lafia, tells her story. She was killed by a bad husband. And so you got these stories, very much like Inferno, that will be told. Canto 6, anti-Purgatory, second spear, same as Canto 5. Dante and Virgil will talk about the power of prayer. This is compelling stuff. And the idea that prayer can help those in Purgatory. But at the same time, obviously, prayer can help those in Dante's schemata, help those as well on earth. They meet Sordello of Mantua, and Sordello will, they'll chat. Dante will critique harshly here in Canto 6, as we said, Italian politics, just like he's critiquing Florentine politics in Canto 6 of Inferno. In Canto 7, we are still in anti-Purgatory and the Valley of the Rulers. Sordello will explain why they can't climb at night, and then they will visit the Valley of the Rulers and the Kings. And one of the things that's interesting about this, I wish I had time, I'd go into this in more detail, but the idea is, the question, why is it so often the case, not always, we have counterexamples even here, but why is it so often the case that great men, great kings, great rulers, have subpar sons who will then kind of take over? This is, again, that instructional mode for Dante. Fathers, take care of raising your sons so they'll grow up to be better, to go beyond, if you will, right? We think about Whitman's passage 46-47 of A Song of Myself, to destroy the teacher is the goal of every teacher. The same, Dante would argue, should be the goal of every father, to make your sons better than you are. Canto 8, we're still in the same valley of the rulers. After some beautiful singing, 2 angels will appear because the snake will come in. Now, a lot's been made of this snake, and obviously we immediately think of the snake of Eden in the Genesis 3 story as well. Dante will see an old friend, Judge Nino, and they will have a conversation. In Canto 9, we're still in the Valley of the Rulers. So notice, we're going to stay in this Valley of the Rulers for a while. Nighttime, Dante sleeps. Dante has a dream. An eagle is going to carry Dante away. Again, this is Lucia to the gates of Purgatory. And an angel there will be waiting. They go up 3 steps to get in, and then you've got the 7 P's. Piccara is the Italian, Latin for sin, and so you're going to have these P's on the forehead of Dante's head, and they will represent, of course, the 7 sins, the 7 deadly sins, or as we said, the 7 distractions. Right? Pride is a distraction, if you will. Okay. The angel will use the keys, obviously the keys of the kingdom of heaven that are given to St. Peter and all of that, and they can enter. But the cautionary note here: don't look back as you go forward. We think, of course, of any number of stories, Lot and his wife, and of course a number of Greek stories as well, where you're not supposed to look back, but if you look back, then bad things happen. Canto 10. This is our first terrace. This is the prideful. Okay, this is hard climbing, but we have beautiful art, and it's here that Dante will wax poetic about poetry and about art. Carvings on the rocks. There's one of Mary. There's one of David. There's one of Trajan, all representing perfect humility. By the way, all the way through this poem. Anytime we want to talk about a single example of humility, it is Mother Mary. This is the prideful. They're punished with these heavy weights on the shoulder, and to that degree, they all have to bend over. Let me read you a couple of lines here, just to kind of give you a sense of how this one reads out. He whose kin nothing new surveys, produced that visible speaking, new to us and strange, the like not found on earth. Finally I gazed upon those patterns of meek humbleness, the art, shapes yet more precious for their artist's sake, when, lo, the poet whispered, where this way but slack their pace, a multitude advance, these to the lofty steps shall guide us on. Mine eyes, though bent on view of novel sights, right, he's bent over, their loved allurement were not slow to turn. And then Dante, speaking directly to the reader. I think we made this argument before, that I think this is where Whitman learned this thing about speaking directly to the reader. Reader, I would not that amazed thou miss of thy good purpose, hearing how just God decrees our debts be cancelled. Ponder not the form of suffering. Think on what succeeds. Think that, at worst, beyond the mighty doom, it cannot pass. And then a few lines later, Christians and proud, O poor and wretched ones, that feeble in the mind's eye, lean your trust upon unstayed perverseness. Know ye not that ye are worms, yet made to at last to form the winged insect, the butterfly? In other words, this whole notion of transformation is a part of this. Impt with angels' plume, that to heaven's justice unobstructed soars, why buoy ye up aloft your unfledged soul? Abortive then and shameless you remain, like the untimely embryon of a worm. In other words, you could be a butterfly if only you would simply evolve. Right? Of course, to do that, you have to have humility, and that's a big part of why we're here in the area of pride. Canto 11, still the first terrace. The prideful continue the penitent's prayer, and they beg to be forgiven for all of those who ever wronged God. Umberto is met once arrogant about his family, but now he recognizes that human greatness is fleeting. We think about those lines from Shelley's Ozymandias, I am Ozymandias, King of Kings, look on my works ye mighty despair, nothing beside remains, and all of that. We get these lines from Canto 11 that I'll share with you. Who shall drive either from their nest? The noise of worldly fame is but a blast of wind that blows from diverse points and shifts its name, shifting the point it blows from. Shalt thou more live in the mouths of mankind if thy flesh part shriveled from thee than if thou hadst died before the coral and the pap were left? Beautiful lines. We think about Marcus Aurelius' soon you will have forgotten all things, and all things will have forgotten you. Of course, we're going to meet this concept over and over again in literature. Don't think too highly of yourself. We are in the circle of the proud. Canto 12, we're still in that first terrace. Dante will study these beautiful sculptures. Those who suffered for their pride are represented. An angel will appear, hits Dante on the head with his wing. More beautiful music is allowed, just opposite of hell. And it's easier to climb now because the P, one of the P's is now missing from his forehead. Canto 13, we're in the second terrace, the envious. They will meet any number of people here. And this is the way that envy is purged, through love. So put it in your notes. Envy, jealousy, is purged through love for Dante in Purgatory. The punishment here is nasty haircloth, horse haircloth, and the eyelids being shown shut together. Again, they're blind, so they cannot see heaven's light with these iron wires. They have a conversation with sepia. Canto 14, still with the envious, Dante will speak with Guido della Duca and as well Caluloni. These both were came from prestigious families, but they make the observation that the good family's children are like quote-unquote poison stumps. It's a compelling idea. Canto 15, we're to the third terrace, the wrathful. The guys who, I mean, think of Achilles, right, when you think about the wrath, you know, and all of that. It's now 3 in the afternoon. Dante is blinded by the light because an angel comes down. He has this vision. A woman is lecturing her son. This is Mary talking to young Jesus after he has gotten lost and stayed away from his mother to have conversations. These are images of gentleness that we're seeing. The angry mob stoning a boy is the martyr of Stephen from Acts 7, 54 through 60. The gentleness, the images of gentleness, the opposite of this kind of wrath. And then finally they're followed up by, they're swallowed up by the blinding smoke. The smoke is the punishment. Canto 16 opens, let me just open with these lines because there's some compelling lines. Again, I wish I could just read all this with you guys, but obviously we don't have the time. Canto 16 opens with these lines. Hell's dunnest gloom, or night illustrious dark, of every planet reft and paled in clouds, did never spread before the sight a veil in thickness like that fog, nor to the sense so palpable and gross, in other words, an engrossing fog of smoke and night. Entering its shade, mine eye endured not with unclosed lids, which, marking near me, drew the faithful guide, offering me his shoulder for a stay. 2 observations. Notice this again, fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. Shakespeare possibly considering lines like that in Macbeth's opening lines to think about this. Notice as well, number 2, the guidance of Virgil continues to be there. He loans him his shoulder, and there we are, right? Virgil does lead Dante because of the smoke. They hear voices again praying and singing, the wrathful purging away their rage with singing, and we have the conversation with Marco. The world is blind, he says, and the reason is because humans were given free will and they elected not to use that free will. Man is at fault, not God. We're back to this theodicy question of Odyssey 1 when Zeus says it's not my fault, it's not the God's fault, it's humans' fault. We're of course going to pick this up in earnest with things yet unattempted, yet in prose or rhyme. That notion from Milton's Paradise Lost. Put it in your notes. We'll be coming back to this idea again. Is God in fact to blame? No, because free will for Dante is always ever present. He, of course, heavily influenced by St. Augustine in that regards. Dante can once more now attack in this moment. Pope Boniface VIII is a bad shepherd to the church. We already mentioned in Inferno, we did this several times before. And he will comment on the lack of separation between church and state. And for Dante, that's a serious problem. Okay, finally the smoke will clear. We're in Canto 17. We're now moving from the third terrace of the wrathful to the fourth terrace of the slothful. Okay, Dante will provide examples of the wrathful, and again, like Procini, who turns into a nightingale for her sin of wrath. An angel will lead them, or there are several others. I guess I'll list all of them. Haman, out of the Esther story. Lavinia, out of the story of the Aeneid, who in the end hangs herself. You'll remember we gave those lectures. Finally, an angel will lead them to Terrace 4, the slothful. Night has fallen. Virgil will discourse on love, and this is an important, in Canto 17, discussion of love, because love will promote all action, both good, the love of God, and bad, the love of self. Here, those who love God have grown lax, and their lack of sustained will, as we sometimes have called it, have led them here to have to figure out how to get on, right? Canto 18 now, the Terrace 4, we're with the slothful again, more of Virgil's talk of love, and Dante's question, love versus free will. And Virgil will answer that God has given humans the power to restrain the will and to resist temptation if in which they want it. I mean, think about why the Divine Comedy was written. I mean, granted, it's obviously very entertaining, but there's clearly something else going on here, right? Dante is wanting us to say, wow, you know, I should probably get on with this thing called spiritual evolution. Ergo, I should probably get moving and not be slothful, if you get my drift, right? Finally, the talk here will begin to center around one abbot of St. Zeno in Verona, and they will have a conversation on this very topic. And then finally, some words and references to the Israelites not following Moses and to the Trojans not following Aeneas, and obviously that's dear to the heart of Virgil. Canto 19, we're in the fifth terrace, the avaricious and the prodigal, that is to say the greedy and the wasters. Dante has another dream. Here he meets the siren that talks with Ulysses, and here beauty turns to ugliness, and then all of a sudden Dante wakes up. The penitents are chained face down weeping,